السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين وأصحابه المؤمنين الأوفياء المكرمين. This is part 4 of our series on the timed marriage and the permissibility, legality of the timed marriage in the Holy Qur'an and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Some people argue that this marriage does not have inheritance. So how could it be a marriage? Because the Quran says in chapter 4, verse number 12, وَلَكُمْ نِصْفُ مَا تَرَكَ أَزْوَاجُكُمْ. You men get half of what your wives leave behind, meaning the inheritance, 50%. So, because in the temporary marriage there is no inheritance between the husband and the wife, then she's not considered to be a wife. But then, my friends, we have other types of marriages, legal marriages, Islamic marriages, that does not entail inheritance. Number one, if a Muslim marry a non-Muslim, even if she's one of the people of book, according to the Muslim jurists, in both traditions, if he dies, the non-Muslim wife does not inherit him, though she was legally married to him. She was his wife. They were a husband and wife. But because she was not a Muslim, so she does not inherit him. Another example. Two people are married Islamically, permanently, legally, but not happily ever after, because the husband is going to murder, God forbids, murder his wife. If he murders his wife, then he does not deserve the inheritance. He does not inherit her. He's disqualified, disavowed. A father kills his son, God forbids. A son kills his father, God forbids. They don't inherit each other. So a murderer cannot inherit his or her victim if they are married. And thus, in the temporary marriage, if they don't put a condition, a requirement, then there is no inheritance between them. But the marriage is a legal marriage, is a temporary marriage, is according to the Book of God and the Sunnah of the Prophet. Now, here let me read the opinion of Ahlulbayt, وسائل الشيعة حر العاملي. And this is volume 21, كتاب النكاح. عن أبي الحسن الرضا عليه الصلاة والسلام, the 8th Imam of the school of Ahlulbayt. قال تزويج المتعة نكاح بميراث ونكاح بغير ميراث. You can marry someone on a temporary basis and you can have inheritance. You can condition that this marriage is based on inheritance. You can ask for it, or it can be without inheritance. بغير ميراث إن اشترطت كان, if you put inheritance, if the wife or the husband says, no, though it is temporary marriage, I want to have inheritance. You inherit me and I inherit you should we die. وإن لم تشترط لم يكن. If you don't put condition, there is no inheritance. إمام الصادق سألت أبا عبد الله عليه السلام إلى أن قال وإن اشترط الميراث فهما على شرطهما. If both of them put condition, put in their marriage requirements, a clause, a condition, that there will be an inheritance between them, then there will be an inheritance, though it is a temporary marriage, because they agreed upon this. المؤمنون عند شروطهم, they have to honor and respect their conditions. In another discussion, this is Kitab al-Kafi, Shaykh al-Kulayni. This is لو أن رجلا من المسلمين تزوج امرأة من أهل الكتاب ثم توفي عنها ما تقول فيها قال لا ترث منه. This is Mu'min al-Taq, one of the companions, disciples of Imam al-Sadiq, is having discussion with Imam Abu Hanifa. Imam Abu Hanifa is saying to him that because there is no inheritance in the temporary marriage, then this is not a marriage. This is Imam Abu Hanifa, Al-Imam Al-A'zam, the greatest scholar. Mu'min al-Taq answers him. He says, suppose a Muslim man marries a non-Muslim lady and then he dies. Would she inherit him? Abu Hanifa says, no, she cannot inherit him because she is not a Muslim. He is a Muslim, she is not a Muslim. Then Mu'min al-Taq says, this is the same case. They are married legally and their marriage was permanent, but she cannot inherit him. So it doesn't mean when there is no inheritance between them, it doesn't mean there is no marriage, legal marriage. There could be a legal marriage, but no inheritance. As we gave the example of two cases, the case of being not a Muslim for the wife, and the case of murder for both the husband and the wife, if one of them murders the others. And then, of course, in the Sunni tradition, there are plenty of hadiths. But these hadiths are not consistent, my friends. They are confusing. Some of them attributed to Al-Rabi' ibn Sabra, as we can see in Muslim and Bukhari. Here, I have it here on the desk, and other books, that he heard the Prophet standing in the Kaaba, in the sacred mosque, بين الركن والمقام وهو يقول أيها الناس إني قد كنت أذنت لكم في الاستمتاع من النساء وإن الله قد حرم ذلك إلى يوم القيامة. This man, Al-Rabi' ibn Sabra, he says that I was standing and I saw the Prophet saying, yes, it's true that I have given you permission to marry temporary, but this temporary marriage has been forbidden till the Day of Judgment. And sometimes, as we can see in Muslim here, they attribute the hadith to Imam Ali, that the Prophet on the day of Khaybar, he forbade the temporary marriage. But then on the day of Mecca, the conquest of Mecca, he gave permission. In fact, Muslim says here in his book, see, these are the 6 books here. Let me read for you. حدثني الربيع بن سبرة عن أبي قال خرجنا مع رسول الله عام الفتح إلى مكة. The year of the conquest of Mecca, which is the 8th year, عام فتح مكة أمر أصحابه بالتمتع من النساء. So the Prophet commanded Amr, his companions, to seek temporary marriage in Mecca on the 8th year. Now, how come the conquest of Mecca is in the 8th year? The story of Khaybar, the conquest of Khaybar, was 1 year earlier, in the 7th year of Hijrah. So in the 7th, you are telling me the Prophet said no temporary marriage. In the 8th year, he came back and he said yes for the temporary marriage. See, do you see the inconsistency? The confusion, the contradiction between the hadiths? And then after that, they say, Ibn Zubayr also said that it is forbidden. Someone said to him, إِنَّكَ لَجِلْفٌ جَافٌ. This is Sahih Muslim. This is Sahih Muslim. فلعمري لقد كانت المتعة تفعل في عهد إمام المتقين يريد به رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. Ibn Zubayr, Abdullah ibn Zubayr, he forbade it. Someone said to him But we used to practice this during the time of the leader of the pious and righteous, the Prophet. How can you come now and you forbid it? So these hadiths are confusing. Beside, my friends, in both the traditions, the traditions of the companions and the caliphs and the tradition of Ahlulbayt, in the Sunni Islam and Shia Islam, they both agree that we cannot legalize something or illegalize something through one isolated narration. It has to be more than one. Because this one person could be confused. Maybe he did not hear the hadith well. Maybe he heard part of it, he did not hear the other part. So we cannot depend on one person, one narrator. And in the case of Al-Rabi' ibn Sabra, who says the Prophet forbade this type of marriage later on, he was the only one who heard the Prophet. While he himself says the Prophet was standing in the sacred mosque, Bayn al-Rukni wal-Maqam, the very popular place in the Kaaba. How come one person heard the Prophet saying this, not others? The Prophet was not alone. The Prophet was always, especially in public places, when he goes to the sacred mosque, he's surrounded by hundreds, if not thousands, of companions. How come one person heard the Prophet saying this and not others? This is called khabarul wahid, an isolated, singular narration by one person. It cannot change the rules depending on one person, because there is a possibility that he's confused. There is a possibility that there is an error in what he's saying. This is number one. Number two, while in the Sunni tradition we have hadiths who state that temporary marriage has been forbidden by the Prophet or by Umar, but also in return we have hadiths of Ahlulbayt that temporary marriage was not forbidden by the Prophet and it is halal till the day of judgment. Let me read few of them. This is Kitab al-Kafi, Shaykh al-Kulaini, an important source of hadith in the Ahlulbayt tradition. عن أبي بصير قال سألت أبا جعفر. Abu Ja'far is the fifth Imam al-Baqir, Muhammad al-Baqir عليه الصلاة والسلام. عن المتعة فقال نزلت في القرآن, is mentioned in the Quran. فما استمتعتم به منهن فآتوهن أجورهن فريضة. In another hadith, سمعت أبا جعفر الباقر يقول كان علي يقول لولا ما سبقني به ابن الخطاب ما زنى إلا شقي. Imam Ali used to say, if it wasn't for the prohibition of Umar ibn al-Khattab, then no one would commit fornication except the one who is terribly indecent. No one would go and fornicate because there is the halal gate is open. Why should someone commit haram? Someone came, this is an interesting dialogue. عن زرارة قال جاء عبد الله بن عمر الليثي. Someone who followed the school of the companions and the caliphs by the name of Abdullah ibn Umar al-Laythi. He came to meet Abu Ja'far. Abu Ja'far means Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, because his son is Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam. فقال له ما تقول في متعة النساء? What is your opinion in the temporary marriage? فقال أحلها الله في كتابه وعلى لسان نبيه صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم فهي حلال إلى يوم القيامة. The Imam simply answered, God made it permissible in his book and in the tradition, the Sunnah, the hadith of his Prophet, so it is legal and permissible till the day of judgment. So the man Abdullah ibn Umayr al-Laythi, he was not satisfied with this answer. He said, مثلك يقول هذا وقد حرمها عمر ونهى عنها. How do you dare to say that it is permissible while Umar forbade it? وَنَهَى عَنْهَا. And not only he forbade, but he placed a penalty on those who would practice it. إِنِّي أُعِيذُكَ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ ذَلِكَ أَن تُحِلَّ شَيْئًا حَرَّمَهُ عُمَرٌ. I seek refuge in God from doing something that it has been prohibited by Umar ibn al-Khattab. Imam al-Baqir simply answered him, فَقَالَ لَهُ فَأَنْتَ عَلَى قَوْلِ صَاحِبِكَ. You follow the opinion of your leader Umar. وَأَنَا عَلَى قَوْلِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. And I follow the opinion and the permission of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. فَهَلُمَّ أُلَاعِنُكَ. And if you don't believe in me, let's do mula'ana, malediction. Same thing that Prophet did with the Christians of Yemen, Najran. When they came and he spent 3 days with them speaking about the identity of Jesus, and they kept saying he's the Son of God. The Prophet, according to chapter 3, Surah Al-Imran, فَمَنْ حَاجَّكَ فِيهِ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَكَ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ فَقُلْ تَعَالَوْا نَدْعُ أَبْنَاءَنَا وَأَبْنَاءَكُمْ وَنِسَاءَنَا وَنِسَاءَكُمْ وَأَنفُسَنَا وَأَنفُسَكُمْ ثُمَّ نَبْتَهِلْ فَنَجْعَلْ لَعْنَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْكَاذِبِينَ. Let's bring our women, your women, our children, your children, ourselves, yourself, and then we invoke God's malediction and curse upon the party of the liars. But then they refused, of course. The Christians of Najran refused to do this malediction. They backed off because they realized the Prophet is true, is honest, he's not lying. So Imam al-Sadiq said to this man, Abdullah ibn Umar al-Laythi, if you insist that you are right and I insist I am right, I'm speaking on behalf of the Prophet, you are speaking on behalf of Umar, and there is contradiction between the two opinions, then let's do mula'ana, malediction. Then Imam said to him, إِنَّ الْقَوْلَ مَا قَالَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. The truth about the matter, the true answer regarding the temporary marriage is what the Prophet said, which is permissible. وَأَنَّ الْبَاطِلَ مَا قَالَ صَاحِبُكَ. And falsehood in what your leader said. He's wrong. So he got angry. This man got angry at the Imam. You know what he said to Imam? Rude. A rude person. When a person does not submit to logic, when a person does not submit himself to the rule of the Qur'an and becomes arrogant, he becomes adabsiz. This is how we call him in Iraq. Adabsiz. Adabsiz means no manners. Mannerless. He doesn't have manners. So he said to the Imam al-Sadiq, he said to Imam al-Baqir, he said to him, would you okay with your wife and your daughter and your sister to marry Mut'ah? And this is the answer that people give nowadays. Imam, an honorable Imam, he did not want to argue with him. فأعرض عنه أبو جعفر حين ذكر نساءه وبنات عمه. He turned away from him because he's not worthy of an answer. Because he's argumentative. Because he's a bigot. But I am going to answer on behalf of the Imam now. If someone asks me or someone else or asks you, would you okay for your daughter to marry Mut'ah? Tell him, would you okay for your daughter to commit fornication, zina? Would you? We don't want our kids to marry Mut'ah. We want them to marry permanent. But if worse come to worse in your family, in the society, with other people's families, not all people are equal. Even with permanent marriage, my friends, some people still practice it today. Some people, even though they are rich and powerful and masculine and they have time and they have energy and they have romance and love, they don't want to practice it. It's up to them. People are different, my friends. They have different urges, different desires, different perceptions, different standards, different personalities, different characters, different tastes. So it doesn't mean that if it is permissible, then all people have to practice it. If it is repugnant for you, it might not be repugnant for others. So you cannot forbid it because you don't like it for your daughter. We said earlier, and we keep saying, this is not the norm. This is an exception. An exception that God made it available, permissible, for some people, for certain cases. Not all cases. If you can afford permanent marriage, let it be. Enjoy permanent marriage with one partner. Establish a family. Stay with your partner for ما دامت السماوات والأرض. As long as you want to stay. This is an exception. This is an exception. We keep saying that. We don't want to promote it in the society. We want our children to marry permanently. But sometimes when they can't afford, they are studying, they are working, they are reluctant to get married, or sometimes they are irresponsible, they don't want to get married, they don't want to carry the responsibility. Then the alternative, if you tell them temporary marriage is haram, I'm assuring you, the alternative is fornication, is zina. They're going to break the law. They are not going to wait for you or listen for you or listen to you. They are going to break the law. So don't do that. Let me read a verse in the Qur'an. God says in the Qur'an, chapter 33, وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ وَلَا مُؤْمِنَةٍ إِذَا قَضَى اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ أَمْرًا أَنْ يَكُونَ لَهُمُ الْخِيَرَةُ مِنْ أَمْرِهِمْ وَمَنْ يَعْصِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ فَقَدْ ضَلَّ ضَلَالًا مُبِينًا. Umar cannot forbid. No one can forbid when God says it's okay. Because God says in the Quran, and it is not for a believing man or a believing woman, when God and His Messenger have decreed a matter. God said this is okay. They decreed the matter. So when God and His messengers and His messenger have decreed a matter, to have a choice regarding the matter. It's not for them to say no. You don't have a choice. Maybe you don't practice it, but don't say this is legal or illegal. Don't say. And whoever disobeys God and His messenger has strayed into manifest error. This is in the Quran. This is Surah Al-Ahzab, chapter 30, verse 36, chapter 33, verse 36. So Umar ibn al-Khattab, according to this book, ضَلَّ ضَلَالًا مُبِينًا. He committed a manifest error when he prohibited the temporary marriage. Because he facilitated the path to fornication. He shut the gate of what is halal and he opened the gate of what is illegal. According to the Holy Quran. We have to submit to God. We follow the Islamic Sharia. And Islamic Sharia halalu Muhammadin halalun ila yawm al-qiyamah. When he said something halal remains halal till the day of judgment. When he says something haram, forbidden, it's haram till the day of judgment. We cannot tamper with that. So the school of Ahlulbayt, my friends, this is their opinion. And let's, again, let me reiterate what I said. Again, look at, this is the book of Kafi. أنه يجب أن يكف عنها من كان مستغنيا. If you don't need to go through this route, then don't go. You don't have to. In fact, Imam says, Imam Al-Qazwini, Musa Al-Qazwini alayhi salam. He said to one of his companions, You have a wife. She's perfect. Why do you want to go through the temporary one? You don't need. This is an exception. Again, this is an exception. This is not the norm. Because sometimes when you stay with someone for a few months, even though in the beginning you decide not to commit yourself emotionally, but you cannot control it later on. Neither the male can control it, nor the female. In the book of Wasa'il al-Shia, book of Hadith, we have a whole chapter about this subject. That the Prophet himself practiced it. روى الفضل الشيباني بإسناده إلى الباقر عليه السلام أن عبد الله بن عطاء المكي سأله عن قوله تعالى وإذا أسر النبي. This is chapter 66, Surah Al-Tahrim, verse number 3. فقال إن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم تزوج بالحرة متعة فاطلع عليه بعض نسائه فاتهمته بالفاحشة فقال إنه لي حلال إنه نكاح بأجل فاكتميه فأطلعت عليه بعض نسائه. The Prophet himself practiced the temporary marriage for some reason. I don't know why. For some reason. I wasn't there to know why. It's up to him. So he shared that with one of his wives. And the verse says, it's in the Quran, the story is in the Quran, chapter 66. When the Prophet confined it, وَإِذَا أَسَرَّ النَّبِيُّ إِلَى بَعْضِ أَزْوَاجِهِ حَدِيثًا, confined a certain matter to one of his wives. But unfortunately, she could not shut her mouth. She gossiped. She shared it with other wives and she created a problem. So the Prophet did practice this marriage. وروى ابن بابويه بإسناده أن عليا عليه السلام نكح امرأة بالكوفة من بني نهشل متعة. Imam Ali did practice it. Now why? He was in Kufa. And when he was in Kufa, he was a caliph, by the way, because he was there for 4 years and 8 months. What was the circumstances? I don't know really. But sometimes it happens. Sometimes it happens. We don't know about the circumstances. Some people are strong, for many reasons they don't practice. Good for them. They don't practice temporary marriage. Good for them. Because of the fear of the society, because of the scandal, because the fear of their wives, most of them, the fear of their wives. Trust me on this. Some of them because of the love of their wives. Loyal, they have no need. It's good. It's excellent. But others, for some reasons, they are okay with it, open to this idea. And if the Prophet and Imam Ali, they practiced it, then there is no embarrassment. There is no shaming. It's halal when they practiced it. But again, I go back at the end of the day and say, this is not the norm. This is an exception. The norm, please establish a family. Commit yourself to one partner so we can lead, inshallah, a stable life. May Allah bless you all, inshallah. May Allah protect you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.